Hello there. This is MD. Here with you on SaskiYano. Here we go again. We are in a new After Effects tutorial. In this tutorial, you will learn how to smooth out your keyframes with easing. In the previous tutorial, you created something like this. Sometimes linear keyframes, which is what these are. And that's indicated by their diamond shape. These are totally fine. And they work just fine for lots of different things. Sometimes, you may want to smooth things out to get a bit of a smoother look. I'm gonna show you how to do that here. So to start, I'm gonna take these bottom keyframes here for scale, rotation, and opacity. Then I select them by clicking and dragging a rectangular marquee. And I'm just gonna hit the delete key. Then just gonna hit P on the keyboard to only select the position property here. I'm also going to adjust some things up here. So actually for now, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the position keyframes as well. And I'm also gonna change this text. So, with the text selected, if I just double click it, it's gonna select all of the characters. And then, I'm going to just delete all of them and replace them with the D. And now, I'm going to grab the anchor point tool, which is Y on the keyboard. And I'm just gonna move the anchor point over here inside the D now. If you don't have this snapping button enabled right here, when you're moving the anchor point or when you're moving a layer, you can enable snapping by holding down Ctrl. That will temporarily enable snapping when you are moving something around. And you can see the anchor point will snap to one of these transform handles around the edge, or will snap right to the center of the layer. So either way, move the anchor point so that it is right in the center of that D there. Then I'll grab the selection tool. Just move it up a little bit. I'm gonna bring the playhead back to the beginning. Set a keyframe. And then I'll go, let's say 2 seconds. And then I'm gonna move it straight across the screen. Now as you're moving, as you are clicking and holding, if you hit the shift key on your keyboard, that will lock your movements to horizontal if you're mostly moving horizontal, or for mostly moving vertical. It will sort of snap it to the vertical plane. And I can be really helpful. Either way, just kind of moving across the screen. I'm also going to change the work area here, which is this bar here. And I'm going to shrink that down to about 2 seconds and 10 frames. That way when I hit the spacebar to preview the animation, it will loop. And if looping is not turned on by default for you, you can jump up here to the preview panel. And with the spacebar selected here, just make sure that this is set to loop and not play once, which is that icon right there. Alright. So what I wanted to show you the difference between the first type of animation that you created, which has this linear temporal interpolation, which means that type of interpolation is doing over time, is linear. It hits the gas, maintains that speed, still the same. If we look in the graph editor, constant speed, and then it drops off. And I want to show you the difference between this and something with a little bit smoother, something with some easing. So with your layer selected, you can come up here to the menu, go to edit, and then duplicate. It's also Command or Ctrl D on the keyboard. Then if you hit U on the keyboard, that will bring up any keyframes that you have created. If you click on position, that will highlight all of the position keyframes, whether it's 2 or 100,000. And if your playhead is over a keyframe, and you can tell that it is, because if you look right over here, this button, which is the add or remove keyframe at current time, is highlighted blue. If we move this just a little bit to the right, you can see that it's not. So, with all the position keyframes selected. In with your CTI over one of the keyframes. You can move all the keyframes at once. In this case, I'm just going to click on the Y here and drag it down. And now, I've duplicated that animation. But I've moved this top layer here down. So we can see the difference between this one and this bottom one here. The next step is smoothing this out. So it's a select these keyframes again. And then, if you right click on your keyframes, there is an option here under Keyframe Assistant. And you can choose Easy Ease, Ease In, Ease Out, and Time Reverse Keyframes was the only options we have available. For now, let's choose Easy Ease, which is also F9 on the keyboard. And let's preview this animation. This deer right here is moving along at a constant rate of speed. You can see that again if you look at the graph editor here. But this one starts slow, increases speed until it gets to the halfway point, and then it starts slowing down. In effect is that we get a much smoother start and smoother finish to this animation. We jump back into the graph editor here. You can select one of these keyframes and you get access to one of these handles here. You can see on each keyframe I have a handle, and if you click one of these handles and drag to the right, you can see you can change the shape of this starting curve here. Likewise, you can change the shape of this ending curve here. Where before we had kind of a nice gentle arc, now we have something that, well, you can see just from the graph is going to start slower. And then it's gonna start to increase speed more in the middle of the animation. And it's going to do so much more rapidly. And in fact right here, it's going to be going a lot faster than it was previously. And then it's gonna start to slow down pretty dramatically until it reaches the last keyframe here. So let's preview what this looks like by hitting the spacebar. So this is smoothing it out even further. We're getting a much slower start, but the speed that we're achieving in the middle is a good bit faster. And one way you can see that is by enabling motion blur. So, I'm going to enable motion blur. And this says it enables motion blur for all layers with the motion blur switch set. Now the two layers that we have here do not have the motion blur switch set. And again, if you don't see the layer switch pane here, and you are looking at the transfer controls pane here, just hit this toggle right down here, or F4, on the keyboard. So if you enable motion blur for both of these layers, you'll see that things are moving faster, are more blurred. So, let's just play this and watch the motion blur. If you take a look at what's going on right in the middle, you can see this is blurred a lot more than this top layer. And that's a good indication that it's moving quite a bit faster. Now, you can take this shape and you can do all kinds of things to it. You can move to handle all the way to the left and then take this handle and pull as far as it will go. And this will create almost an exponential curve here where it starts. And it's going really fast. You can see like this, it's 10,000 pixels per second. But only for like a frame. And then it drops away down. Or, you can do the opposite. This sort of motion almost makes it look like it's being sucked in by a magnet. Or something. Or you can do any combination in between. You can have it start moderately slow. And then finished really slow. Or maybe started out a little bit smoother. Then maybe something like that. The point here is to show you that you can take one set of keyframes that have the same values, the same start position and the same ending position, and you can totally change the movement in time or what's happening in between them, the interpolation if you will. Down here we have linear interpolation, which is just a constant speed from point A to point B, and that up here we have something more along the lines of a Bezier or curve, where it starts slowly, builds up, and then we start to slow down gradually. It's smoother. Or another way, you could say that it's easing into the motion, and we're easing out of the motion. Or we're easing into the animation, and we're easing out. You can apply the same concept of adjusting the temporal interpolation. That's a big word, but that basically just means what's happening in the time between the two keyframes, basically the speed of the animation. To anything that you have animated, it doesn't have to be with position. It just so happens that position is really easy to demonstrate. And it's really easy to see what's going on. You're gonna see more of these ideas and concepts used in some upcoming tutorials. But for now, it's time to move on to the next tutorial. We're gonna learn about spatial interpolation. Finally, we are done for today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave your comment down below in the comments section. Also, if you want to learn more, take a look at our first channel, Everything PS. See you next time. Bye.